think the next question is Naveen. He's in advertising and media business. Naveen, please go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
My question to you is about our bureaucracy. Recently, a retired IAS officer, Mr. Naresh Chandra Saxena, wrote a book on what ails the IAS and why the IAS fails to deliver. And among the reasons that are mentioned for the failure of IAS are things like political pressures, corruption, frequent transfers, lack of empathy among the bureaucracy, and creation of redundant posts because of fast promotions. So, my question to you, sir, is do you agree that the IAS has failed to deliver? What do you think are the problems with our bureaucracy today? Thank you.
Thank you, Naveen, for that question. Mr. N.C. Saxena is a friend. We were together in the National Advisory Council. And as an honest public official, obviously he, like many others, is troubled about what's happening in administration. Not only is politics in some degree of crisis, but even administration is in some degree of crisis. On the one hand, the IAS and the premier civil services of India, they held the frame together. They call it the steel frame. So there is a case to make that they have actually held India together in the past 75 years. We appreciate that. Certain institutions, traditions, and practices and a pan-national approach certainly served us well. On the other hand, they are seen to be increasingly anti-democratic. Anachronisms in a democratic polity, isolated, elitist, and far removed from the realities. They are wedded to their own values, like permanent priesthood. This is a valid criticism for all democracies in the world, but much more so in India because we invested them with enormous authority, enormous traditional institutional strength and power over millions of lives at a relatively young age. Some of the things that Naveen talked about are symptoms. Corruption is not the problem. Corruption is the outcome of bad structuring, lack of accountability. Political pressure, it depends on the kind of political pressure. To do the right thing, if elected representative puts pressure, that's his duty. That's what democracy is. But if you want to pervert the rule of law, be partisan in delivery of goods and services, treat people unequally, that kind of pressure is wrong. So we must understand the detail of what's happening. But in the large measure, while there are some things right with our civil services, there are some things seriously wrong. They're unfit in this day and age. What are they? The first is the monopoly of all key jobs in the country. In the so-called cadre rules, we created a situation where once you enter the IAS and senior bureaucracy, almost every key position is only reserved for you. It's almost like a caste system. It is the point of entry determining your subsequent career, not what you actually accomplish subsequently. There's no competition for the key positions in the country. You get it as a monopoly. The second problem is generalization. A notion like in the olden days, philosopher king days, you can hold any job with a bit of common sense and glib talk. You can be in charge of industries one day, education next day, healthcare the third day, law and order fourth day, and social welfare the fifth day. This simply is not on. In modern world, very high degree of understanding, domain expertise and specialization, and a deep, insightful understanding of the global developments in that sector are very critical in order to govern a country of 1.4 billion people well, in order to provide them value for the money, provide them honest and competent services. We never recognize the importance of specialization and domain expertise. The third is the system generally, not only the senior bureaucracy, but across the whole spectrum, bureaucracy is rarely held to account. In a country where there's ubiquitous corruption and incompetence and abuse of authority, we all know, we all face it every day. I'm not talking of only the civil services, I'm talking of the low end of the spectrum, the clerks and the many other large body of bureaucracy. hardly any disciplinary action is taken, hardly anybody is removed from service. On the one hand, almost everybody has an experience in dealing with government offices where there is corruption, arrogance, insensitivity, delay, inefficiency, abuse of power, all kinds of things. On the other hand, almost nobody seems to pay a price for that. Unaccountability, lifelong tenure. We must address all these. And they can be easily addressed. No country on earth outside the Indian subcontinent has these features. Britain, which created bureaucracy in India, doesn't have this kind of bureaucracy. They're highly specialized, highly accountable, and there is no monopoly of all the key jobs. They keep on getting people from all kinds of walks of life, from the armed forces, from the market, from the private sector, from the academia. Whereas in India, there's fierce resistance to that. So we have to change these incentive structure and ensure accountability. Once you do that, once you design institutions properly, they deliver very well. Even now in our country, with all the imperfections of bureaucracy, in some select situations, bureaucracy functions very well. Conduct of elections. They do pretty well. Yes, behind the scenes, vote buying, etc. is happening. That's not a bureaucracy's failure. That's a deeper political failure, systemic failure. But the conduct of elections is pretty good, credible. It's a source of great pride and privilege to all of us as Indians. The rest of the world is astounded that we conduct elections so well. Or disaster relief. We do pretty well relative to our resources and technology. And certain agencies where we created a different set of circumstances, like ISRO, like BARC, some other agencies, they deliver very well. What Britain calls them executive agency model. So that means if we restructure bureaucracy, either as an organization ensure greater accountability and have greater clarity about the delivery, or even in an otherwise dysfunctional and ineffective organization, in select situations, you create different conditions like elections and disaster relief. The system is delivering very well. So that's what we need to do. Why and how we are able to deliver in certain situations or in certain organizations. Why we are not delivering elsewhere. And how other countries are delivering, because bureaucracy everywhere in the world behaves the same way. It becomes wedded to its own values. It forgets the outcome and the purpose. And unless we create instruments of accountability and empower them for actual delivery, we will not get the best from the bureaucracy. The recruitment part is pretty good. UPSC must be really praised for doing a remarkable job in a very difficult country when there is enormous amount of glamour attached to these jobs. By and large, the selection process is credible. There is no serious and credible allegation so far of either corruption or political interference and pressure in recruiting the civil servants at the senior level. That part we're doing reasonably well. But post-selection, we're not getting the best out of them because we structured it badly. It's not about individual morality, it's about institutions, incentives, and accountability.